Canto 7, Chapter 4, and text number 34. O King, Prahlada Maharaja's good qualities are still glorified by learned saints and Vaishnavas, as all good qualities are always found existing in the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They also exist forever in his devotee, Prahlada Maharaj. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. From authoritative scripture, it is learned that Prahlad Maharaj still lives in Vaikuntha Loka, as well as within this material world on the planet Sutala. This transcendental quality of existing simultaneously in different places is another qualification of the Supreme Personality of God. Goloka Eva Nivasati Akilatma Bhuta. The Lord appears in the core of everyone's heart. Yet he exists on his own planet, Goloka Vrindavana. A devotee acquires qualities almost the same as those of the Lord because of unalloyed devotional service. Ordinary living beings cannot be so qualified, but a devotee can be qualified like the Supreme Personality of Godhead, not in full, but partially. Okay. Text 35. In any assembly where there are discourses about saints and devotees, O King Yudhisthira, even the enemies of the demons, namely the demigods, what to speak of you, would cite Prahlada Maharaja as an example of a great devotee. Text 36. Who could list the innumerable transcendental qualities of Prahlada Maharaj? He had unflinching faith in Vasudeva, Lord Krishna, the son of Vasudeva, and unalloyed devotion to him. His attachment to Lord Krishna was natural because of his previous devotional service. Although his good qualities cannot be enumerated, they prove that he was a great soul, a Mahatma. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. In his prayers to the 10 incarnations, Jayadeva Goswami says, Keshava Drita Narahari Rupa Jaya Jagadisha Hare. Prahlada Maharaj was a devotee of Lord Nrsimha, who is Keshava, Krishna himself. Therefore, when this verse says Vasudeva Bhagavati, one should understand that Prahlad Maharaja's attachment for Nrsingadeva was attachment for Krishna. Vasudeva, the son of, Vasudeva, the son of Vasudeva, the son of Vasudeva, Prahlada Maharaja, therefore, is described as a great Mahatma, as the Lord himself confirms in Bhagavad Gita 7:19. Papanam Chandaramante Yanavam Mam Prapadyante Vasudeva Sarvaniti Sa Mahatma Sudurlabha. After many births, and deaths. He who is actually in knowledge surrenders unto me, knowing me to be the cause of all causes and all that is. Such a great soul is very rare. A great devotee of Krishna, the son of Vasudeva, is a great soul, very rarely to be found. Prahlad Maharaja's attachment for Krishna will be explained in the next verse. Krishna Graha Grihita. Prahlad Maharaja's heart was always filled with thoughts of Krishna. Therefore, Prahlad Maharaja is the ideal devotee in Krishna consciousness. Text number 37. From the very beginning of his childhood, Prahlad Maharaja was uninterested in childish playthings. Indeed, he gave them up altogether and remained silent and dull, being fully absorbed in Krishna consciousness, since his mind was always affected by Krishna consciousness. He could not understand how the world goes on being fully absorbed in the activities of sense gratification. Good question. Purport. Prahlada Maharaja is the vivid example of a great person fully absorbed in Krishna consciousness. In Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya 8.274, it is said, Stavara Jangama Deke Na Deke Tara Murti Sarvatra Haya Nija Ista Deva Spurti. Okay. A fully Krishna conscious person, although situated in this material world, does not see anything but Krishna, anywhere and everywhere. This is the sign of a Mahabhagavata. The Mahabhagavata sees Krishna everywhere because of his attitude of pure love for Krishna, as confirmed in the Brahma Samhita 5.38. Premanjana Churita Bhakti Vilochanena Santaksadeva Hidesa Vilopenti Yam Sham Sundaram Achintya Guna Swalpam Govindam Mati Purisham Tamaham Bhajami. I worship the primeval Lord Govinda, who is always seen by the devotee, whose eyes are anointed with the pulp of love. He is seen in his eternal form of Shama Sundara, situated within the heart of the devotee. An exalted devotee or Mahatma, who is rarely to be seen, remains fully conscious of Krishna and constantly sees the Lord within the core of his heart. It is sometimes said that when one is influenced by evil stars like Saturn, Rahu, or Ketu, he cannot make advancement in any prospective activity. In just the opposite way, Prahlada Maharaja was influenced by Krishna, the supreme planet, and thus he could not think of the material world and live without Krishna consciousness. That is the sign of a Mahabhagavata. Even if one is an enemy of Krishna, a Mahabhagavata sees him to be also engaged in Krishna's service. Another crude example is that everything appears yellow to the jaundiced eye. Similarly, to a Mahabharata, everyone but himself appears to be engaged in Krishna's service. Prahlad Maharaja is the approved Mahabhagavata, the supreme devotee. In the previous verse, it was stated that he had natural attachment. Naisar, Naisar, Naisar Giti Yata. The symptoms of such natural attachment for Krishna are described in this verse. Although Prahlad Maharaj was only a boy, he had no interest in playing. As stated in Srimad Bhagavatam 11.2.42, Viraktir Anyatra Cha. The symptom of perfect Krishna consciousness is that one loses the interest in all material activities. For a small boy to give up playing is impossible, but Prahlad Maharaj, being situated in the first class devotional service, was always absorbed in a trance of Krishna consciousness, just as a materialistic person is always absorbed in thoughts of material gain. A Mahabhagavata like Prahlada Maharaja is always absorbed in thoughts of Krishna. Text 38. Prahlada Maharaja was always absorbed in thought of Krishna. Thus, being always embraced by the Lord, he did not know how his bodily necessities, such as sitting, walking, eating, lying down, drinking, and talking, were being automatically performed. Purport: a small child, while being cared for by his mother, does not know how the needs of the body for eating, sleeping, lying down, passing water, and evacuating are being fulfilled. He is simply satisfied to be on the lap of his mother. It's true. Similarly, Prahlada Maharaja was exactly like a small child, being cared for by Govinda. The necessary activities of his body were performed without his knowledge. As a father and mother care for their child, Govinda cared for Prahlad Maharaja, who remained always absorbed in thoughts of Govinda. This is Krishna consciousness. Prahlada Maharaja is the vivid example of perfection in Krishna consciousness. Yeah, he never forgets Krishna. That's the perfection that we're talking about here. He's always thinking of Krishna and serving Krishna and always engaging in remembering the Lord. And this way, his mind is always focused 100% on Krishna. Text 39. Because of advancement in Krishna consciousness, he sometimes cried, sometimes laughed, sometimes expressed jubilation, and sometimes sang loudly. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. This verse further clarifies the comparison of a devotee to a child. If a mother leaves her small child in his bed or cradle and goes away to attend to some family duties, the child immediately understands that his mother has gone away, and therefore he cries. Very true. But as soon as the mother returns and cares for the child laughs and becomes jubilant. Similarly, Prahlada Maharaj, being always absorbed in thoughts of Krishna, sometimes felt separation. thinking, where is Krishna? This is explained by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Sunya yitam jagat sarvam govinda vidahaname. When an exalted devotee feels that Krishna is invisible, having gone away, he cries in separation, and sometimes when he sees that Krishna has returned to care for him, he laughs, just as a child sometimes laughs upon understanding that his mother is taking care of him. These symptoms are called bhava in the nectar of devotion. Various bhavas, ecstatic conditions of a devotee, are fully described. These bhavas are visible in the activities of a perfect devotee. Text 40. Sometimes, upon seeing the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Prahlad Maharaja would loudly call in full anxiety. He sometimes lost his shyness and jubilation and began dancing in ecstasy, and sometimes being fully absorbed in thoughts of Krishna. He felt oneness and intimidated past and imitated, I'm sorry, and imitated the pastimes of the Lord. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Prahlad Maharaja sometimes felt that the Lord was far away from him and therefore called him loudly. When he saw that the Lord was before him, he was fully jubilant. Sometimes, thinking himself one with the Supreme, he imitated the Lord's pastimes. And in some separation from the Lord, he would sometimes show symptoms of madness. These feelings of a devotee would not be appreciated by impersonals. One must go further and further into spiritual understanding. The first realization is impersonal Brahman, but one must go still further to realize the Paramatma and eventually the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is worshipped by the transcendental feelings of a devotee in a relationship of Shanta, Dasya, Sakya, Vatsalya, or Madhurya. Here, the feelings of Prahlad Maharaja were in the mellow of Vatsalya, filial love and affection, as a child cries when left by his mother. When Prahlad Maharaja felt that the Lord was away from him, he began to cry, Nadati. Again, a devotee like Prahlada sometimes sees that the Lord is coming from a long distance to pacify him, like a mother responding to a child saying, My dear child, do not cry. I am coming. Then the devotee, without being ashamed, due to his surroundings and circumstances, begins to dance, thinking, Here is my Lord is coming. Thus, the devotee is in full ecstasy, sometimes imitates the pastimes of the Lord, just as the cowherd boys used to imitate the behavior of the jungle animals. However, he does not actually become the Lord. Prahlada Maharaj achieved the spiritual ecstasies described herein by his advancement in spiritual understanding. However, he does not actually become the Lord. Prahlad Maharaja achieved the spiritual ecstasies described herein by his advancement in spiritual understanding. Text 41. Sometimes, feeling the touch of the Lord's lotus hand, He became spiritually jubilant and remained silent, his hair standing on end and tears gliding down from his half closed eyes because of his love for the Lord. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. When a devotee feels separation from the Lord, he becomes eager to see where the Lord is, and sometimes when he feels pangs of separation, tears flow incessantly from his half-closed eyes. As stated by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in his Siksastika Yugai Itam Nime Sena Chakshusa Parvasayitam, the words Chakshusa Parvasayitam refer to tears flowing incessantly from the devotee's eyes. These symptoms, which appear in pure devotional ecstasy, were visible in the body of Prahlad Maharaj. Text 42. Because of his association with perfect, unalloyed devotees who had nothing to do with anything material, Prahlad Maharaja constantly engaged in the service of the Lord's lotus feet by seeing his bodily features when he was in perfect ecstasy. Persons very poor in spiritual understanding became purified. In other words, Prahlad Maharaja bestowed upon them transcendental bliss. Haribol. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Apparently, Prahlad Maharaja was placed in circumstances in which he was always tortured by his father. Well, that's terrible. In such material conditions, one cannot have an undisturbed mind. Yeah, one has always a disturbed mind. But since bhakti is unconditional, Haitaki Pratihata, Prahlad Maharaja was never disturbed by the chastisements of Hiranyakashipu. On the contrary, the bodily symptoms of his ecstatic love for the Supreme Personality of Godhead turned the minds of his friends who had also been born in atheistic families. Instead of being disturbed by the torments of his father, Prahlada influenced them. Prahlada influenced these friends and cleansed their minds. A devotee is never contaminated by material conditions, but persons subjected to material conditions can become spiritually advanced and blissful upon seeing the behavior of a pure devotee. Wow. Text 43. My dear King Yudhisthira, the demon Hiranyakashipu tormented this exalted, fortunate devotee, although Prahlada was his own son. Oh, even his own son got to torture him. Purport. When a demon like Hiranyakashipu, despite his elevated position due to severe austerities, begins to tease a devotee, he begins falling down, and the results of his austerities dwindle. One who oppresses a pure devotee loses all the results of his austerities, penances, and pious activities. Since Hiranyakashipu was now inclined to chastise his most exalted son, Prahlada Maharaja, his opulences began dwindling. Text 44. Maharaj Yudhisthira said, O best of the saints among the demigods, O best of spiritual leaders, how did Hiranyakashipu give so much trouble to Prahlad Maharaja, the pure and exalted saint? Although Prahlada was his own son, I wish to know about this subject from you. Yeah, it's astonishing. One can be so mean. Purport. To know about the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the characteristics of his pure devotee, one must inquire from authorities like Devarshi Narada. One cannot inquire about transcendental subject matters from a layman, from an ordinary person. As stated in Srimad Bhagavatam 3.25.25, Satam Prasangam Mama Virya Samido Bhavanti Fit Karna Rasayana Kata. Only by association with devotees can one authoritatively understand the position of the Lord and his devotees. A devotee, like Narada Muni, is addressed as Suvrata. Su means good, and Vrata means vow. Thus, the word Suvrata refers to a person who has nothing to do with the material world, which is always bad. One cannot understand anything spiritual from a materialistic scholar puffed up with academic knowledge. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 1855, Bhaktya mam abhijanati. One must try to understand Krishna by devotional service and from a devotee. Therefore, Yudhishthira Maharaj was quite right in wanting to learn further about Prahlad Maharaj from Sri Narada Muni, who was a pure devotee. Text 45. A father and mother are always affectionate to their children. When the children are disobedient, the parents chastise them, not due to enmity, but only for the child's instruction and welfare. How did Hiranyakashipu, the father of Prahlad Maharaj, chastise such a noble son? This is what I am eager to know. Ah, very, very good question. Maharaj Yudhishthira's further in, Maharaj Yudhishthira further inquired, how was it possible for a father to be so violent toward an exalted son who was obedient, well behaved, and respectful to his father? O Brahmanam, O Master, I have never heard of such a contradiction as an affectionate father's punishing his noble son with the intention of killing him. Kindly dissipate our doubts in this regard. Yeah, that is actually very disturbing and spiritually, let's say, confusing history. In the history of human society, an affectionate father is rarely found to chastise a noble and devoted son. Therefore, Maharaj Yudhishthira wanted Narada Muni to dissipate his doubt. Thus end the Bhakti Vedanta purports of the seventh chapter, of the seventh canto, fourth chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Hiranyakashipu Terrorizes the Universe. Haribol, Haribol, Haribol. Okay, now we are going to chapter 5, canto 7, chapter 4. Chapter 5. Prahlad Maharaja, the saintly son of Hiranyakashipu. Oh, this is exciting. We're going to hear more about Prahlad Maharaj. Prahlad Maharaja did not carry out the orders of his teachers, for he was always engaged in worshiping Lord Vishnu. As described in this chapter, Hiranyakashipu tried to kill Prahlad Maharaj, even by having a snake bite him and by putting him under the feet of elephants. Yet he was successful. Hiranyakashipu's spiritual master, Sukracharya, had two sons named Sunda and Amarka, to whom Prahlad Maharaja was entrusted for education. Although the teachers tried to educate the boy, Prahlada in politics, economics, and other material activities, he did not care for their instructions. Instead, he continued to be a pure devotee. Prahlada Maharaj never liked the idea of discriminating between one's friends. Because he was spiritually inclined, he was equal toward everyone. Once upon a time, Hiranyakashipu inquired from his son what the best thing was that he had learned from his teachers. Uh-oh, this is going to be a big problem. Prahlad Maharaja replied that a man engrossed in the material consciousness of duality, thinking, this is mine and that belongs to my enemy, should give up his household life and go to the forest to worship the Supreme Lord. Oh boy, Hiranyakashipu is not going to do that. When Hiranyakashipu heard from his son about devotional service, he decided that this small boy had been polluted by some friend in school. Thus, he advised the teachers to take care of the boy so that he would not become a Krishna conscious devotee. However, when the teachers inquired from Prahlad Maharaj why he was going against their teachings, Prahlada Maharaj taught the teachers that the mentality of ownership is false and that he was therefore trying to become an unalloyed devotee of Lord Vishnu. The teachers, being very angry at the answer, chastised and threatened the boy with many fearful conditions. They taught him to the best of their ability and then brought him before his father. Now this is the showdown. Hiranyakashipu affectionately took his son Prahlada on his lap and then inquired from him what the best thing was that he had learned from his teachers. As usual, Prahlad Maharaja began praising the 9 processes of devotional service, such as Shravanam and Kirtanam. Thus, the king of the demons, Hiranyakashipu, being extremely angry, chastised the teachers, Skanda and Amarta, for having wrongly trained Prahlad Maharaj. The so-called teachers informed the king that Prahlad Maharaj was automatically a devotee and did not listen to their instructions. This is hard to believe because Prahlad is just a little boy, like 5 years old. When they proved themselves innocent, Hiranyakashipu inquired from Prahlad, where he had learned Vishnu Bhakti. Vishnu Bhakti. Prahlad Maharaj replied that those who are attached to family life do not develop Krishna consciousness, either personally or collectively. Instead, they suffer repeatedly birth and death in this material world and continue simply chewing the chewed. Prahlad explained that the duty of every man is to take shelter of a pure devotee and thus become eligible to understand Krishna consciousness. Well, that is the wrong, let's say, statement that Hiranyakashipu wanted to hear. A devotee does, I mean, a demon does not want to hear a statement like that. Enraged at this answer, Hiranyakashipu threw Prahlada Maharaj from his lap. Since Prahlada was so treacherous that he had become a devotee of Vishnu. Just imagine, that's his fault. He became a devotee of Vishnu. That means his father is a complete demon. So, since Prahlada was so treacherous that he had become a devotee of Vishnu, who had killed his uncle, Hiranyaksha, Hiranyakashipu asked his assistants to kill him, to kill Prahlada. The assistants of Hiranyakashipu struck Prahlada with sharp weapons, threw him under the feet of elephants, subjected him to hellish conditions, threw him from the peak of a mountain, and tried to kill him in thousands of other ways, but they were unsuccessful. Why is that? Well, because Krishna was protecting Prahlada. Hiranyakashipu therefore became increasingly afraid of his son, Prahlada Maharaj, and arrested him. Okay, throwing him into a dungeon. The son of Hiranyakashipu's spiritual master, Sukracharya, began teaching Prahlada in their own way, but Prahlada Maharaj did not accept their instructions. While the teachers were absent from the classroom, Prahlada Maharaj began to preach Krishna consciousness in the school, and by his instructions, all his class friends, the sons of the demons, became devotees like him. Haribol. Text number 1. Sri Narada, okay, so the great saint Narada said, the demons, headed by Hiranyakashipu, accepted Sukracharya as their priest for ritualistic ceremonies. Sukracharya's two sons, Sanda and Amarka, lived near Hiranyakashipu's palace. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The beginning of the life story of Prahlada is recounted as follows. Sukracharya became the priest of the atheists, especially Hiranyakashipu, and thus his two sons, Sanda and Amarka, resided near Hiranyakashipu's residence. Sukracharya should not have become the priest of Hiranyakashipu, because Hiranyakashipu and his followers were all atheists. A Brahmana should become the priest of a person interested in the advancement of spiritual culture. The very name Sukracharya, however, indicates a person interested in obtaining benefits for his sons and his descendants, regardless of how the money comes. A real Brahmana would not become a priest for atheistic men. Next 2. Prahlad Maharaja was already educated in devotional service life, but when his father sent him to those two sons of Sukracharya to be educated, they accepted him at their school along with the other sons of the Asuras. Text 3. Prahlada certainly heard and recited the topics of politics and economics taught by the teachers, but he understood that political philosophy involves considering someone a friend and someone else an enemy, and thus he did not like it. Yeah. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Politics involves accepting one group of men as enemies and another group as friends. Everything in politics is based on this philosophy, and the entire world, especially at the present, is engrossed in it. The public is concerned with friendly countries and friendly groups, or enemy countries and enemy groups. But as stated in Bhagavad Gita, a learned person does not make distinctions between enemies and friends. Devotees, especially, do not create friends and enemies. A devotee sees that every living being is part and parcel of Krishna. Amayavam so jiva bhuta. Therefore, a devotee treats friends and enemies equally by trying to educate them both in Krishna consciousness, both in Krishna consciousness. Of course, atheistic men do not follow the instructions of a pure devotee. I'm sorry. Atheistic men do not follow the instructions of pure devotees, but instead consider a devotee their enemy. Oh my God. A devotee, however, never creates a situation of friendship and enmity. Although Prahlad Maharaja was obliged to hear the instructions of Sunda and Amar, he did not like the philosophy of friends and enemies, which forms the basis of politics. He was not interested in this philosophy. Now you see, this is a very, very profound statement. This is what's going on today. It's all about friends and enemies. So the it's like the uh, uh, you'll hear all the time, like for example, America good, Russia bad. That's friends and enemies. But what's wrong with the Russians? They're not necessarily all Russians are not bad, and all friends are not necessarily good. So here we see that this whole uh, false narrative of friends and enemies is artificial and is meant to divide people and cause enmity and war. Text 4. My dear King Yudhishthira, once upon a time, the king of the demons, Hiranyakashipu, took his son Prahlada on his lap and very affectionately inquired, my dear son, please tell me now what you think is the best of all subjects you have studied from your teachers. Whoa, this is a dangerous question. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Hiranyakashipu did not ask his young son anything that would be very difficult for him to answer. Instead, he gave the boy a chance to speak plainly about whatever he thought might be best. Prahlad Maharaja, of course, being a perfect devotee, knew everything and could say what the best part of life is. In the Vedas, it is said, Kasmin Bhagavata, Bhagavo Vijnate Sarva Idam Vijnatam Bhavati. Very important statement. If one properly understands God, he can understand any subject matter very nicely. Sometimes we have to challenge big scientists and philosophers, but by the grace of Krishna, we emerge successful. It is impossible, practically speaking, for ordinary men to challenge scientists or philosophers concerning genuine knowledge. But a devotee can challenge them because the best of everything is known to a devotee by the grace of Krishna, as confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 10:11. Tesham ivanakam paratam aham ajnana jan atama nasayami atmabhavasto jnana dipena vasvata. Sorry. Krishna, who is situated in the core of everyone's heart, as the supreme as the super soul, dissipates all ignorance from the heart of a devotee. As a special favor, he enlightens the devotee with all knowledge by putting before him the torch of light. Prahlad Maharaj therefore knew the best of knowledge, and when his father inquired from him, Prahlada gave him that knowledge. Prahlada Maharaj was able to solve the most difficult parts of problems because of his advanced Krishna consciousness. Therefore, he replied as follows. Text number 5. Prahlad Maharaj replied, O best of the Asuras. Already, right there, he's on the wrong foot, according to his father. King of the demons, as far as I have learned from my spiritual master, any person who has accepted a temporary body and temporary household life is certainly embarrassed by anxiety because of having fallen in a dark well where there is no water but only suffering. One should give up this position and go to the forest, Vana. More clearly, one should go to Vrindavana, that's even better, where only Krishna consciousness is prevalent and should thus take shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Oh, that's the worst thing that Hiranyakashipu wants to hear. Purport. Hiranyakashipu thought that Prahlada, being nothing but a small boy with no actual experience, might reply with something pleasing, but nothing practical. Prahlad Maharaj, however, being an exalted devotee, had acquired all the qualities of education. Yasyasti bhakti bhagavat yakinchana sarvir gunais tatra samasate sura haravavaktasya kuto mahadguna manoratana sati dhavato bahi. One who has unflinching devotional faith in Krishna consistently manifests all the good qualities of Krishna and the demigods. However, he who has no devotion to the Supreme Personality of Godhead has no good qualifications because he is engaged by mental concoction in material existence, which is the external feature of the Lord. Bhagavatam 5:18-12. So-called educated philosophers and scientists who are simply on the mental platform cannot distinguish between what is actually sat, meaning the truth, eternal, and what is asat, temporary. The Vedic injunction is asato ma jyotir gama. Everyone should give up the platform of temporary existence and approach the eternal platform. The soul is eternal, and the topics concerning the eternal soul are actually knowledge. Elsewhere it is said, Apashyatam Atma Tattvam Grihe Sugriha Medinam. Those who are attached to the bodily conception of life and who thus stick to life as a grihasta or householder on this platform of material sense enjoyment cannot see the welfare of the eternal soul. Maharaj, Prahlada Maharaj confirmed this by saying that if one wants success in life, he should immediately understand from the right source what his self-interest is and how he should mold his life in spiritual consciousness. One should understand himself to be a part and parcel of Krishna, and thus completely take shelter of his lotus feet for guaranteed spiritual success. Oh, there it is. Best advice. Everyone in the material world is in the bodily conception, struggling hard for existence, life after life. Prahlada Maharaja therefore recommended that to stop this material condition of repeated birth and death, one should go to the forest, Vana. In the Varnashrama system, one first becomes a brahmachari, then a grihasta, a vanaprastha, and finally a sannyasi. Going to the forest means accepting vanaprastha life, which is between grihasta life and sannyasa. As confirmed in the Vishnu Purana 3.8.9, Varnashrama Charavata Purushena Para Kumam Vishnur Aradyate. By accepting the institution of Varna and Ashrama, one can very easily elevate himself to the platform of worshiping Vishnu, the supreme personality of Godhead. Otherwise, if one remains in the bodily conception, one must rot within this material world, and his life will be a failure. Society must have divisions of Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Sudra. And for spiritual advancement, one must gradually develop as a brahmachari, grihastha, vanaprastha, and sannyasi. Prahlad Maharaja recommended that his father accept vanaprastha life because as a grihastha he was becoming increasingly demoniac due to bodily attachment. The little boy, the 5-year-old boy, is educating his father. His father, Prahlad Maharaj, recommended that his father accept vanaprastha life because as a grihastha he was becoming increasingly demoniac due to bodily attachment. Prahlada recommended to his father that accepting vanaprastha life would be better than going deeper and deeper in griham andhakupam, the blind well of life as a grihastha. In our Krishna consciousness movement, we therefore invite all the elderly persons of the world to come to Vrindavana and stay there in retired life, making advancement in spiritual consciousness. Krishna consciousness. Haribol. Text 6. Narada Muni continued. I think we're over time. All right, we'll just do this one.
Yeah.
When Prahlada Maharaja spoke about the path of self-realization in devotional service, thus being faithful to the camp of his father's enemies, Hiranyakashipu, the king of the demons, heard Prahlada's words, and he laughingly said, "Thus is the intelligence of children spoiled by the words of the enemy." Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Hiranyakashipu, being a demon, would always consider Lord Vishnu and his devotees to be his enemies. Therefore, the word parapaksha, on the side of the enemy, is issued here.
Used here.
Huh?
Used.
Is used here. I'm sorry. Hiranyakashipu never agreed with the words of Vishnu or Krishna. Rather, he was angered by the intelligence of a Vaishnava. Lord Vishnu, Lord Krishna says, Sarvadharma parityaja mamekam saranam vraja. Give up all other duties and surrender unto me. But demons like Hiranyakashipu never agreed to do this. Therefore, Krishna says, Na mam duskritina mudha prapadyante naradama mayapita jnana asaram bhavam asrita. Those miscreants who are grossly foolish, lowest among mankind, whose knowledge is stolen by illusion, and who partake of the atheistic nature of demons, do not surrender unto me. Bhagavad Gita 7:15. The Asura Bhava, the atheistic nature, is directly represented by Hiranyakashipu. Such persons being Mudha and Naradama, fools and rascals, the lowest of men, would never accept Vishnu as the supreme and surrender to him. Hiranyakashipu naturally became increasingly angry that his son Prahlada was being influenced by the camp of the enemies. He therefore asked saintly persons like Narada not to be allowed within the residential quarters of his son, for otherwise Prahlada would be further spoiled by Vaishnava instructions. Mm. Well, at least his father recognizes what is Vaishnava, doesn't accept it. Hiranyakashipu advised his assistants, my dear demons, give complete protection to this boy at the Gurukula, where he is where he is instructed so that his intelligence will not be further influenced by Vaishnavas who may go there in disguise. Haribol. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. In our Krishna consciousness movement, the tactic of dressing oneself like an ordinary karmi is necessary because everywhere in the demoniac kingdom is against the Vaishnava teachings. Krishna consciousness is not at all to the liking of the demons of the present age. As soon as they see a Vaishnava dressed in saffron garments with beads on his neck and tilak on his forehead, they are immediately irritated. They criticize the Vaishnavas by sarcastically saying, Hare Krishna, and some people also chant Hare Krishna sincerely. In either case, since Hare Krishna is absolute, whether one chants it jokingly or sincerely, it will have its effect. The Vaishnavas are pleased when the demons chant Hare Krishna, because this shows that the Hare Krishna movement is making ground, is taking ground. The excuse me, the greater demons, like Hiranyakashipu, are always prepared to chastise the Vaishnavas, and they try to make arrangements so that Vaishnavas will not come to sell their books and preach Krishna consciousness. That was the condition of in earlier of the devotees, especially when they were trying to spread Krishna consciousness in Russia. Thus, what was done by Hiranyakashipu long, long ago is still being done. That is the way of the materialist life. Demons or materialists do not at all like the advancement of the Krishna consciousness, and they try to hinder it in many ways. Yet the preachers of Krishna consciousness must go forward in their Vaishnava dress or any other dress for the purpose of preaching Chanakya Pandit. Okay, period. Chanakya Pandit says that if an honest person deals with a greater cheater, it is necessary for him to become a cheater also, not for the purpose of cheating, but to make the preaching successful. Okay, that means that one will adopt the same technique as the cheaters, but in order to cheat the cheaters. Okay, I think we'll stop right there and think about that. We have to be more clever than the cheaters. so that we can cheat them to become Krishna conscious.
Yes.
Haribol.
Harivilas.
Oh, glory to Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare. So takeaway for today is following. Yet the preachers of Krishna consciousness must go forward in their Vaishnava dress or any other dress for the purpose of preaching. Chanakya Pandita says that if an honest person deals with a great cheater, it is necessary for him to become a cheater also, not for the purpose of cheating, but to make his preaching successful. Okay. I like the way Prabhupada writes and thinks. He's not a wimp. He is practical, and if necessary, he can outwit the cheaters. Okay, thank you very much, my dear devotees. Chant Hare Krishna and be happy. So our takeaway for today is this exactly. And then when it says, yet the preachers of Krishna consciousness must go forward in their Vaishnava dress or any other dress for the purpose of preaching. Chanakya Pandita says that if an honest person deals with a great cheater, it is necessary for him to become a cheater also, not for the purpose of cheating, but to make his preaching successful. Okay, so we have to outdo the cheaters by becoming bigger cheaters. But in order to help others become Krishna conscious, not to with cheating, in what sense? Well, you can cheat a person to forget Krishna consciousness, or you can cheat someone to become Krishna conscious. So, therefore, one can use everything in the service of Krishna. He can always use cheating in the service of Krishna to make people Krishna conscious. Haribol. All glories to Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Then we have to have there have to be better cheater than cheaters.
We'll end the call, Maharaj.